Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise. Thank you all for tuning to the show today. I am talking to myself in my head. It's always interesting to do. Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com and the Institute of Applied Energetics. You can get all that information at www.soulhealer.com. If you are a fan of the show and want to be kept track, if you want to keep track of who's been, God, it's been a crazy night already, and I haven't even started. If you want to keep track of who's coming on the show, please do go to justenergyradio.com. That's www.justenergyradio.com and sign up for our weekly newsletter or like us on Facebook, where it'll keep you informed of everybody that's coming up, all the fun, exciting information that's happening with the show. You can also check out our over 6 years worth of archives on the webpage and about 2 years worth of archives on the Just Energy Radio YouTube channel. Also, you can download the IRN Inception Radio Network app and listen to the show on your phone while you're like at work. I know my husband does. Shh, don't tell his boss. And all of the guys that he works with. So like big thumbs up to those guys for listening to me every week, which is very cool. I have a couple of announcements to make this Saturday. So this Saturday, May 25th, if you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I will be doing a book signing of my new book, Man-Made, The Chronicles of Our Extraterrestrial Gods, at the Barnes & Noble in Plano off of 15th, the one by Collin Creek Mall, right next to the Starbucks. So you can get a drink. And it's a little secret, but apparently Barnes & Noble is doing a 15% off sale if you have the coupon. And I printed a bunch of coupons, so I'll have coupons. So you can come, get the book signed, and get it on sale. How cool is that? I thought that was like synchronistic on my part. Wow, I got coupons. I love coupons. Anyway, let's see. After that, June 15th and 16th, I'll be speaking at the Alchemy event in Los Angeles, California. They are also doing, check it out. I think it's alchemyevent.com. They have a bunch of great speakers, and they're also live streaming the entire conference for like $50 that you can sign up for on the website as well. And then if you're in the New York area, I'll be doing 2 book signings, one on June 21st and the other one on June 22nd, one in New Paltz, New York, and the other one in Albany, New York. So if you wanted to come check it out, I'm going to be doing a short presentation before the book signing and then signing books. I don't have coupons for those, sorry. So you have to come to Plano to get that. And then I have some fun and excitement happening in September, but I think I'll wait for that a little bit later on. So my first hour guest is missing. I think if you were listening to the show last week, I think he's going to have some missing time by the time this is all over. I'm hoping that it's just a time difference issue because I think he's in Arizona, and you know how like they don't change when everybody else changes and it gets really callywampered. And so he might be coming on in the second hour, but I don't know yet. And so to spend the first hour with us, we're going to be speaking with Stacey Martin about her book, The E Word. I heard that title and I was like, oh man, this sounds like it's really good. So let me tell you a little bit about Stacey and we will get her on the air. Stacey A. Martin is an author, a realtor, and a manager. Her first book, The E Word, When Entitlement Becomes a Dirty Word and How to Overcome It. After a successful career in management and sales, Stacey now coaches other people how to achieve the same success. She is a member of the National Organization of Professional Women and of the National Association of Realtors. So the author of the book, The E Word, please welcome Stacey Martin. Hey, Stacey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you tonight?
Better now.
Maybe that's a bad question.
Well, you know, spending an hour just kind of talking to myself is rough. I don't know how people like Rush Limbaugh and Alex Jones, I don't know how they do it for hours at a time.
Well, they think they have a lot to say. I think that's how they do it.
Ah, that's the ticket. That's the ticket. So, Stacey, since we're obviously not in a rush today, how did you get started down the road of, you know, like looking at ourselves and helping people kind of get past their own stuff?
Well, it's really funny. I never really saw myself in that role. But about a little over a year ago, I had one of those weird sleepless moments. You know, I went to bed when I was extremely tired, overtired really, and tried to sleep and couldn't. And I sort of was thinking about a family member I have who was struggling. This is someone who's in their early 20s and is trying to figure their life out and not really getting anywhere. And it reminded me of me at that age. And so I decided that I needed to share my story, and the best way to share that was with my book. And thinking that I would write a book, you know, if someone had said 2 years ago, you're going to do that, I just would have laughed them right out of my life. But I got so excited about the idea, I wrote it very quickly, and then I learned all about self-publishing and started down that path.
Well, you know, I feel like when the time is right, sometimes we'll do things that are kind of shocking, even to ourselves.
Yeah, I think it was definitely a shock to my family. They had never really thought of me as an author or someone who could produce something artistic or creative, and all of a sudden I just did. So that was a surprise to them.
Well, and in reading your book, I kind of would get the impression that, and you finished it.
Yeah.
Would be, you know, part of the operative statement. It's like, and you finished it.
Yeah, it was one of those things. It was sort of like the night that I became inspired and decided I was going to do it. One of the ways that I have found to keep myself energized and motivated is to broadcast what I'm doing. So that night, I literally went on Facebook, and like most people, I have, 100 or so friends and family, and I said, I'm going to write a book. And that was part of, for me, sort of making a commitment not only to myself, but to the people that I know and love, and knowing that if I made that commitment, I better be sure that I was going to follow through. And in writing, there are times when it's really tough and really, it would be easy to put that back down and say, I'm not meant to do this. But knowing that there were people who were expecting me to get it done helped keep me going.
But see, that's really cool. I mean, for me, I just get inspired, and then it's just, you kind of can't get me off the computer because I'm just there for hours and hours at a time just working.
Right. Well, that definitely happened too. The night that I was inspired, I had gone to bed at like 6 p.m. and I woke up in this frenzied, inspired state about 10. And between 10 p.m. and 3 in the morning, I did nothing but I wrote the outline of the book. I wrote the first 3 chapters, the first draft of the first 3 chapters, and spent like an hour, like touching out to contacts that I had, friends that I knew had been successful at publishing, and with their advice and encouragement, doing some research about self-publishing. So, by 3 a.m, I was already well on my way to getting this work started.
Yay. And it's a good, I enjoyed your book. It wasn't really hard to, Yeah,
it's easy.
Well, all right, it's not that. I didn't find any spelling mistakes or grammar mistakes, so that was good. And I usually...
Well, that's good.
But, it's the kind of book that you could give to someone that was 16 years old, 17, 18, 20, and they could get through it and not have it. Because it's not like a textbook kind of book.
When I started writing it, that was really the point for me was, for me, my story, I was that 20-something-year-old who couldn't get out of her own way, who, I had this set of expectations about my life that were unrealistic. And those expectations, the idea that someone would take care of me or that because I was smart, the world sort of would come to me easily, those ideas and expectations really made it hard for me to see myself as earning my own success.
Mm-hmm. So is that what the E word is?
Well, the E word's all about entitlement. And it's all about, having that expectation, that perception that the world owes you. And so in my book, I talk about the point when I was in my 20s when I had a personal experience that turned that around for me, that changed my point of view on the world and my perceptions, and helped me see what I needed to do to really make the real improvements in my life.
Well, I think it's interesting, and I don't mean this to be like totally nosy, but can I ask how old you are now?
Yeah, I'm in my sort of mid to late 40s.
Okay. Well, because I'm just trying to gauge, because one of the things that I've seen I have 2 kids that are in their early 20s, early to mid 20s, and they've come a long way. I'll say that. They've come a long way. But I work as a counselor. I do medical intuition evaluations and spiritual counseling and whatever. I do stuff. And I've had young people come in and they're suffering from depression. Life is too hard. And I feel like it's kind of endemic in our society now with young people.
I think there's a couple of factors that really play into how that came about. I talk a little bit in the book about, I think it's really tough for smart people, really tough if you go to school for 12 years or 13 years and you get this message over and over that you are smart and you learn that things are expected of you and you learn that people believe you're going to be successful. I think it's easy to sort of just assume that that's going to happen. You don't really get the message that, besides being smart, you have to develop some skills and practice those skills on a daily basis. The world isn't just going to hand you cake and let you eat it. So I think that the school systems have done such a good job of helping us have better self-esteem that they've made it harder for us to hear that part about, challenge yourself, teach yourself, find a position where you can really be happy at work, and then you'll earn what you'll receive the earnings that you have generated. And I think especially in the last 10 years, as we've seen the rise of reality TV shows, we've really gotten to see a window into the lives of people who are obscenely wealthy. And when you see people on TV who can afford a $40,000 birthday cake or who can afford, a $2 million wedding, when you see that as a regular course on the television set, you sort of look around and go, well, I'd like to have those things. Why can't I have those things?
I guess that's why I don't watch those shows.
Played a lot into that problem. I
had a friend who bought a $900 blouse. We were at this party, and I'm like, oh, that's a really cute blouse. She goes, yeah, it only cost $900. I'm thinking I could buy like 3 wardrobes for myself and my kids and the dog.
Right.
And have change for $900.
Yeah. I remember watching one of those reality shows about brides, and the bride was pouting because her dad would only spend $40,000 on the jewelry. not just the whole wedding, the jewelry that she was going to get as a gift. And I thought, God, in my life, that would be 2 really nice cars, or it could be 3 crappy cars and a year's worth of insurance payments. So to see her
a huge
just
down payment on a
that
house.
she could only have $40,000 worth of jewelry for this one day. We have some interesting role models and some interesting vision of the way other people live, and it doesn't really match our own reality.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you were talking about smart kids having challenges at work. I mean, one of the things that I saw with my kids growing up was that they weren't challenged. Mm-hmm. They were told, this is what you need to do for this assignment, and they would do the minimum, and they would get an A. So there was no incentive to work harder or try harder because they were rewarded for doing the minimum amount of work. And I almost feel like there's this belief that, well, I don't really have to work for it because that was acceptable all the time before.
Right. I think, I work at a real job and another job. And in both of those fields, you see people come in who they really just think we're going to give them a paycheck. I had one of the job for me that pays most of my bills is I'm a manager in a grocery store. And we had a conversation with one of our cashiers the other night because he thought it would be okay if he went shopping while he was on the clock. And, if you just need a gallon of milk and we're about to close and there's no customers, we'll let you run to the back and get your milk and get out of here. But he wanted to, shop. He wanted to take a carriage and go shopping and then, have one of the other people on the staff ring him out while other customers were waiting. And, that idea that now you have a bad idea in your head about how this is going to work and what we're paying you to do right now. To have to explain that to an employee, for him, what we expected didn't match what his perception of reality was. And I think that's where we get a lot of pain in our lives, when our expectations and our perceptions don't meet the reality of our circumstances.
Well, but I think the reality of a lot of these kids' expectation is that, well, I've been working there for 3 whole months. 3 whole months. How come I haven't been promoted yet? How come I'm not like the vice president of the company? I know everything. 3 months.
Yeah, I know. Well, I talked a little bit in the book about, I had heard I was smart all through school, and I thought I was pretty smart, and I had thought about maybe being a doctor. And I went to work for a nursing home. And I sort of expected that, I'll be in the medical field, and they'll see how smart I am, and I'll get promoted really fast, and I'll be in golden. Who needs to go to college? And, it didn't take very long before I realized that, I was handling bedpans and cleaning bottoms, and I wasn't learning a lot about medicine in that job.
So how long did you last?
I actually did that job for, I think, 2.5 years. I started when I was 16. It was my first job. That, I'll tell you, that is eye-opening when that's your first job. And did it for, the first year that I was in college. So, yeah, that would have been 2.5 years or so.
Well, that's actually pretty good, I think.
Yeah.
You had some sticking power.
A little bit about my motivation.
If someone has the E word as part of their characteristics and their persona, are there some traits or beliefs or feelings that they would have that you would be able to recognize them, or if there's someone listening that is suffering from entitlement syndrome? I like that, entitlement syndrome.
Oh, I like that. I think for people who suffer from it, one of the key components is the pain that we feel. I remember I had this moment in my life where I literally was having this pity party. I was just bereft that things were so tough, and I was in so much pain. And it was in that moment when I really thought about what was making me so unhappy. Why was I so sad? Why was I so angry and so hurt? And it was realizing that it was because I couldn't meet society's expectations. It was because I wasn't meeting the expectations that I had of myself, that I was in all this pain and just so uncomfortable with where I was. So I think sometimes we see that. You mentioned earlier depression. I think depression is a huge symptom of someone who's suffering either from entitlement or, a whole range of symptoms, a whole range of maladies. But depression, that idea that I can't get out of bed and I just can't get myself moving, my whole sense of feelings is just sort of turned off. I can't even process the emotion that I'm feeling. That's one of the key symptoms, I think. When we see kids in their 20s struggling, that's certainly something that can be a sign. And I think when you see kids who float from job to job to job, they spend a couple weeks and then they're moving on to something else, and now they're in, a new field for a couple of weeks and they're moving on. That can be a symptom because they're walking into a job with some expectations that don't meet reality, and either their bosses are saying you got to change how you're looking at things, or they're walking out saying, I'm not going to do that kind of work. You think I'm going to sweep the floor for $8 an hour? That's not going to work. So I think that can be another symptom when we see people job hop and really not be successful in positions that we think are entry level and really simple.
Oh, I know. I knew this guy, and his in-laws paid for him to go to mechanic school. I mean, in and amongst a bunch of other things that they paid for this guy. They paid for him to go to mechanic school. And so then he got a job working at a dealership, and he was doing like tire changes, tire rotations, and oil changes. And this is where I got my 3-month thing. And he had been there 3 months, and he decided that he knew better ways to do things than the management, and started getting very vocal about it. And he didn't last that long. That happened for a few jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the people who do us the biggest disservice as individuals are sometimes the people who love us the most. So, I talk in the book about, there's a whole chapter in there for parents and for the people who love someone who's entitled. Because one of the reasons that it takes a long time for people to get over entitlement is because they're supported, because somebody's paying their bills, or someone is giving them money, or someone is, making sure that they don't really feel the pain of the reality of their situation, that they've got food and they've got a roof over their head and their basic physical needs are met. When someone does that and then gives you like even meets some of your wants, it's really hard to hit bottom. I don't think entitlement by itself is not an addictive position, but I certainly think that hitting bottom, like you might in an addiction, it can be really helpful. And if you have parents or people who love you who are paying your bills and making sure that you have everything you need, you're never going to feel that bottom.
Well, I mean, my observation with these people, because I look at them intuitively, is, it's not that they're depressed and it's not that they can't, but there's this big kind of neon sign that says, I don't want to.
Right.
Right. And so it's like, well, just because you don't want to doesn't mean you shouldn't. Yeah. I remember, and since it's my ex, I guess I don't care anymore. In my last marriage, my ex was in and out of jobs, and he had been on unemployment for like 6 months, so the unemployment ran out. And he was like, whoa, and I'm like, well, go get a job. I go, if you have to go and shovel shit to help pay the bills, then you need to go shovel shit, whether you like it or not. I probably shouldn't have said shit on air, huh? Anyway, and he really didn't appreciate me just telling him it's like, it's not just all going to fall on me to take care of it.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people aren't willing to put themselves in that mode of, I have to do what I have to do in order to survive.
Yeah, it's part of that epiphany process. Most people who work in their daily life don't want to do it. I don't want to get up and go to the grocery store and, babysit all the folks who would really rather not be there. I don't want to have to lock the doors or unlock the doors or throw the trash out or throw the cardboard out or bag groceries. I don't want to do any of that stuff. I want to sit by the lake, feel the breeze, So it's when you realize that everybody around you is in the same position and none of us want to be there either, but we're all there because we have to meet our needs. We have to earn the income so that we can have a roof, have some food, have a bed, meet those basic needs. And then as we get older and we grow in our skills and we grow in our capability level, then we can get a few toys and, enjoy ourselves a little more. But until someone has that epiphany about, I don't want to go to work, but I guess I have to, oftentimes they won't.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I just am glad. I was very concerned with my kids that's how they're my stepkids, so I kind of got. I had to make a lot of changes with them. It helped them to make a lot of changes, and but they both turned out really great, and they both work hard, and it's like, woohoo, it's all good. Versus, one's 25 years old and still living at home, which would be bad.
I think that says a lot about your parenting. It says a lot about the fact that you set limits for your kids. They learned probably early on in their lives with you, even though they were, at some point of development when they came to you, they learned early on that you had expectations and that you were going to be assertive about them meeting those expectations, and that if they wanted anything from you, they had to earn it. When kids learn that lesson early,
ding, ding.
It sticks
you
with
win
them.
The prize.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. And they knew that if they messed up, there were definitely consequences.
Right.
To their bad
and
behavior.
real consequences. You can't, as a parent, just threaten consequences and not follow through. There have to be real consequences, or the kids learn early on that there is no retribution for when they don't meet your expectations.
Well, and then when they get into their adult life, I think that part filters into this whole entitlement thing where they can get away with doing whatever they want, and there are no consequences. Well, it's like, I didn't feel like getting up for work today.
Right.
And they get there a half hour late, and then they get fired, and they're like, what did I do?
Yeah,
and they're so confused.
Exactly. And so I think when parents raise their kids like that, that may seem like the easy path or the easy road at that time. If you're just going to give in to kids who are whining because you don't want to cope with the temper tantrum or with their emotional anxiety when they're going through it, then you're not doing them any favors. When your kids become adults, now they're your burden. You've created your own burden because they're not going to go out in society and support themselves. They're going to be yours. And Susie Orrs has this great thing that sort of helped me be really good about setting limits with my kids. And she talks a lot about taking care of our own retirement. And if I don't say no to my children, then how am I going to save enough so that I can take care of myself when I'm not able to work anymore? I'm in my 70s and 80s. And that really can change your mind about, am I letting my kid live in my house for free, or I'm paying for a kid's car, or I'm paying for a kid's insurance. That's okay for a few years, but eventually it adds up, and it makes it impossible for you to set yourself up for a retirement. And who's going to support you in your retirement? If you haven't trained your kids to work as young adults, they're not going to be around when you're reaching that age when you don't have the option of working any longer.
Which is never. Well, especially these days in America, it's like you retire, you die. How old were you? They were 83. They just retired.
Well, that's probably a whole nother book. The R word. That's the cool thing about once you write a book, it sort of opens up this floodgate of opportunity. And now I've got this whole series that I'm writing, and every once in a while I get a new word to add to the series.
Well, see, to me, the R word is responsibility.
But
You
see,
know,
that's a
to
good
be
word.
matched with the P word, which is their arch nemesis, procrastinator.
Yeah, I'm guilty of procrastinating. I find, for me, when I catch myself procrastinating, it means that there's something I really am nervous about doing. I'm uncomfortable that I have the skills to get it done.
Huh? Say that again?
For me, when I'm procrastinating for something, usually it's because I'm afraid. I have some kind of fear about the task that's ahead of me, and I'm nervous about doing it right or getting it done. It's not normally that I want to avoid it completely or that I don't want to do it. I take on tasks that are difficult pretty easily, but it's when I've got a task that's new that I haven't done before, or that I'm afraid I'm going to do it badly. That's when I find myself procrastinating.
See, for me, it's not a fear thing. It's more like I just really don't want to do it. You know, like income taxes. It's like, can you just take this off my desk? I just don't want to do it. Don't want to. I do it enough stuff.
Yeah.
You know, but even with kids, some of this sounds like you end up raising them to just be really dependent, on you and what you can give them and not really what they can give back.
Right.
Or
Give
society.
themselves. Exactly. So, and when you do that, you're not helping them. You're not doing them a favor. You're not making their life easy, because eventually you're going to be gone, and who's going to be there to pick up the pieces? Who's going to be there to take care of them?
Well, I guess that's when they might hit the crash. Although I have seen, I don't even want to say young people, late 20s, mid 30s, where they still haven't got their stuff together, and they'll go running home to mom and dad, and they'll take them in, and take care of them again.
Yeah, even people in their 40s sometimes. And that boggles my mind. That someone in their 40s would not have the self-esteem and the self-pride and the self-satisfaction already to feel good about taking care of themselves. And B, that their parents would just be okay with them coming back to the nest. My kids, I have 5, and my youngest is about to go off to college, and there's going to be no empty nest tears here. I can't wait. I love my kids, but I can't wait until they have their own lives and I've got my house back.
Oh, I waited for that day. I was like, tick, 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 tick. And then he got rid of me. So it's like, so you can just tell how much love there is there.
Yep. But can you imagine having your kids come home in their 30s or 40s? I mean, there are circumstances when I can see that happening. One of the chapters in the book is about grief. And absolutely, there are times in someone's life when they have to be supported. When we know they're going to struggle and they're going to suffer, and that they really are not in a place where they mentally can handle being at work or can handle what society expects of them. So, if someone loses a spouse or, has a sudden illness, of course their parents, their family, their support system are going to step in and make sure they're okay. But, we would expect that to be a short-term thing, 6 months, a year, 2 years before someone would pull themselves back together, and go back out and rebuild their lives.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I have heard of situations where, there are extraordinary circumstances that happen to people. And I hope anyone that's listening that has had an extraordinary circumstance happen where you do end up having to go live with mom, that we're not talking about you. So, because there's really a big difference between, I had this one friend, and he and his wife separated, and she somehow made it so that he was paying like $1,100 a month in child support, which was over half of his paycheck.
Sure.
Well, he couldn't even afford to, this was in California, he couldn't even afford to get an apartment.
Yeah, I think that's common even today. Yeah.
And that's not because you personally are a failure. It's because stuff happens, or you get sick and you can't work, or, Stuff happens.
Yeah, I think that's a really important part of the message is that, I'm not saying in my book or in this interview that that we shouldn't love and support people who need love and support. The E word for me, when someone is feeling entitled, that's when they're really not. They really should be capable of holding a job, paying their bills, meeting society's expectations, and being a productive member of society. When someone is in the position to be able to meet all of those expectations and just has the wrong point of view in their own mind about what society should be giving them, that's when I think, entitlement has become really a disease almost.
Do these thoughts and beliefs have a long-term impact? I mean, we're kind of focusing on, 20-something-year-old, but if it's not resolved, does it have a longer-term impact on an individual?
Absolutely. I think even for people who recognize that thought pattern, it can still creep back in. Even for myself, I relayed the story. I added a whole chapter at the end of the book after I had written most of it about driving. I tend to be a very safe driver. I tend to be very respectful of the rules of the road and very careful about going the speed limit. But I'll tell you, when I'm running late, sometimes all that can go out the window. And I'm guilty of having that mentality of, it's really important that I get to this appointment or get to where I have to be or show up, at least not too late. And at those moments, I have that entitlement thinking of, it's okay to break the rules. It's okay to go fast. It's okay to take risks, take more risks than I would normally. And, that can really get you into trouble. I was driving down the road and saw this whole family trying to cross the road and realized that in that moment I was not in that entitlement mindset. I was in that, I got time to get home. I can get there whenever. And I stopped and let them cross the road, and they were not in any danger. But I realized that there was another car coming in the opposite direction who seemed to be really driving fast and really not paying attention to what was going on. And I sort of had this, again, one of those epiphanies where I thought, that's me. Sometimes I do that. Sometimes I'm not paying attention, and I'm so focused on what I need and getting what I want that I forget about the world around me and how I have a responsibility to the world around me to drive carefully and to respect the rules, and there's a reason we need to do that. I think even people in their 30s and 40s who have gotten over a sense of entitlement, you can sometimes have flashes and flares of it.
Okay, so we have a question from, I don't even know that I want to try to say this name. I have no phonics skills. Aluvne. The big A. The big A. It's the E name in the chat. The A name. The E name. The A name in the chat room. Here's the question. And it says, have you noticed the entitlement thing is younger workers as far as how long they work at a job? Like a younger person wants a management position after 1 month when a senior has worked there for 5 months or more or has more experience.
Yeah, I see that all the time. All the time. And, I think that speaks to what you were talking about with the auto mechanic who, he thought he had figured out how to do things better and how to take some shortcuts that would save the company some money. And, I think in some sense that's admirable. In some sense it's great when someone wants to take the initiative and make improvements in their work environment and help people. But definitely I think that sense of entitlement where you say, I'm smart and I'm going to tell all of you how to do things, and you're going to start paying me to do that, right? That definitely, I think, is a common thing for, especially for the generation we see today.
Well, with that guy, he was just stupid and opinionated, in my opinion. But, so let's say, because we have about 12 minutes. Let's say that we find that what we're talking about, like what if it applies to me? What if I'm like a totally entitled person? Mm-hmm. Not, but it could happen. I don't know.
Sure. Sure.
But what can we do to start moving out of that and changing ourselves or our circumstances, or, where's a good place to start first? Is it on the outside, going and getting a job? Is it on the inside?
I think there's 2 or 3 things that are really important if you find yourself in that position. So the first thing is, if you are listening to this program and are thinking, oof, maybe this applies to me. Does this fit me? I don't know. The first thing to do is ask the people around you. And when you're asking people for feedback, you want to make sure they know you're ready for bad news. So that was something interesting I found. When you write a book and you give it to your friends, all your friends love it. Love it. You have written the book of the year. But when you send it off to someone professional, they may have some thoughts about how you could improve it. And I think you have to, if you ask for feedback, make sure people know you're braced for the real story. You are braced for them to give you bad news. And then you have to really listen to what they're saying. So you want to ask questions like, do you see my life, you see me struggling. Do you think I have this thing about being entitled? Is that something that's playing into how you see me into relating with the world? And really listen for how people answer that question. And one of the key things that you need to do if you find yourself that the answer is yes, yes, we think maybe you could do things differently or see things differently. One of the most important things is there's probably people supporting you, your family, your loved ones, your parents, your friends, and you need to get in a position where they are not doing that as much. And I think part of it, that's a negotiation. You don't want, if you are entitled or have that feeling of entitlement and are struggling and suffering today, you don't necessarily want to go to the people who love you and say, that's it, cut me off, I've got to go start a new life and I'm just going to do it. Because that really is going to be, I think, so shocking, it might really put you in a worse position. But you want to start doing some research and start thinking about, how could I become independent? How could I get a better job or get a new job? How could I survive on the income I currently have? And if the income I currently have isn't enough, how can I grow my income over time? And so I think anybody listening to this interview or reading my book, it's really important for them to know that this change in perception, this change in expectations, it's not going to fix things for you. It's not going to put extra money in your bank account. But when you have that change of view, you have that change of perception, that paradigm shift, you can start to improve your life all by yourself. You go get that entry-level job that you've always thought you were too good for. Or, maybe you're in an entry-level job and you're thinking you're ready to take over a management position. I'd give it a little more time, and wait till someone comes to you and says, hey, I see you as a leader, and we're looking for people with leadership potential. We think we'd like to develop you. You wait until someone comes to you and invites you into that role before you just decide you're going to jump into it.
You mean I can't just pray that, I'm on Undercover Boss and I get like this totally awesome promotion and $10,000?
Well, listen,
it could
I believe
happen.
in prayer. I'm a faithful person. I have a very active, busy social and spiritual life, and I believe in the power of prayer. So I think prayer can help. But you don't want to pray for just the money, because getting the money is just going to help you get some toys that are not going to really improve your life. What you want to pray for is wisdom and patience and persistence. And you want to pray for people to be honest with you and really help you see how you can improve your life, how you can become independent. Because anybody can get $5,000 or $10,000 and think for a moment that it's going to make them wealthy, it's going to enrich their life, but I'll tell you, that can be gone in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that this whole idea of entitlement is new or growing? I mean, I've been in the, I want to say self-help business for a really long time, and I can't quite tell if, it is a new concept or a concept that's been there, but has just really kind of exploded into the consciousness of America. I mean, I just remember, if you're going to do something, do it good and work hard. And there's just this whole new mentality, or at least in my opinion. So do you think that this is something that's just always been there? Or do you think that there's a rise in this kind of mentality and behavior?
I absolutely believe there's a rise in this kind of mentality and behavior. And I think if you think for just a minute about cavemen, and maybe even closer to us, the American Indians. There was nobody riding with the Navajos who felt entitled. I think they knew very clearly that if they wanted to eat, they better get on their horse and go shoot a buffalo. I think when our survival was tied to what we actually did, when it was tied to going out and either growing or gathering our own food, when our comfort was tied to our building or digging or somehow finding our own shelter, there was no sense of entitlement there. But, what we've seen in the last couple of 100 years is first the Industrial Revolution, which made it much easier to have a house or have clothes on your back. And then we've seen in the last 20 years the Internet rage. And now we're so interconnected, we see so much more opportunity. Again, we see those reality shows where there is so much wealth, it's simply obscene. And it doesn't have this disclaimer when you go to click on the Kardashians. It doesn't say, watching this program can be bad for your mental health. You're going to see people with homes that are so outlandishly decked out. You might imagine that you could live in a place like this, but trust us, that's not going to happen unless you work really, really, really hard. You can't...
And not necessarily even then.
Well, I don't know. I think the Kardashians do work hard. That's one of the reasons I like that show, is because I'm sort of impressed at how hard they work.
But I'm just talking about, like, regular people.
Yeah.
You might be a very hard worker your whole life and still never end up in a house like that, or driving a Mercedes, or having $40,000 to go buy some jewelry that you'll wear once.
Exactly. Right. And so, but when we click the remote control, and so easily we flip to these images, these very rich visual images, how can we not just think, wow, that's my environment, I could live there, maybe that is where I'm supposed to be, and then we just don't have, we have this disconnect of, those folks worked really hard to get there, or they were lucky enough to inherit it, or, they somehow just stumbled into this very lucky blessing, It doesn't happen for the vast majority of society. Most of the people you meet, unless you live in Hollywood, most of the people you meet work regular jobs and feel really lucky that they have medical insurance and are worried about how they're going to make their bills at the end of the month. Most of the people you meet are like that.
Well, I mean, if you're in Southern California, half the people you meet are aspiring actors or actresses or dancers, and they're working as waitresses and valets and doing all these odd jobs, waiting for their moment, which may or may never come.
Right, exactly. And there's no accounting for how many of them spent their lives there for years waiting on the successful, waiting on the very few people who do make it, and just spent their years being a waiter or being a waitress or, working in the coffee shop.
Which I don't really get that part. But anyway. Do you have any words? I mean, that's really great advice for the people who have E syndrome. But what about their enablers? Any words for the parents or spouses or other loved ones that are enabling the individual that, isn't doing anything, basically?
Yeah, I think first you have to find courage. It's really hard to give people bad news, especially when the people you're talking about are people that you love deeply. And you want the very best for them. You want them to have that magic house. You want them to have a rich life. But when you love them, you have to develop the courage to tell them the truth. And boy, that's hard, but I think you have to think about their long-term health. And you've got to sit them down and say, listen, I'm worried about you. Here's what I see. You know, I see this job hopping, and you can't seem to settle. I see this thing where you can't get out of bed to go even have an interview, and I'm worried. You know, we're not talking about this has been 3 months. We're talking about, you know, I've been paying your bills for a long time, and I'm worried. You know, you have to find the courage to have those honest, painful heart-to-heart conversations and tell them how you lay it out, tell them how you see it. And I think you then, once you find that courage, you have to have the strength to stick to it. Because once you start going down that road, the only goal that is going to work for both you and the person that you love is for them to overcome it, for them to move past, you know, this sense of entitlement. And what that means is you've got to help them develop a budget. You've got to help them find ways to make that budget work. You've got to help them see how, you know, you really don't have to have $50 cable or $100 cable. You can live with $8 a month for Netflix. That works just great. You know, help them find ways to live within their means. And then make a plan and say, okay, this is the plan. You've got 6 months or you've got a year to get out of my house, you know, and set a firm but compassionate and loving goal where you say, you know, we're going to have a deadline and we're going to work together to get you out in time. And, you know, I think when that happens, when you're successful with that, you have to be firm, but you also have to be flexible. If someone's making good progress, you know, give them a little credit for that. But you have to, at some point, be absolutely firm. I'm not going to support you for the rest of your life. And you may have to tell them many times. You may have to say that message over and over. And half the time in the beginning, you may have to say it over and over to convince yourself. But the important thing about setting limits with your children, whether they are 2 years old or whether they are 25, the important thing is society is all about limits. And kids have to learn to live within the limits if they're going to survive and succeed.
And I do too, because our time is totally up. And personally, I would just tell them, get the hell out of here. Get the hell out of here. Psh, before a house falls on you too. That's just the kind of gal I am. Stacey, if somebody wants to get a copy of your great book, The E Word, where can they get it?
Amazon.com. They can go there and get it in paperwork or an ebook, and also BarnesandNoble.com.
Great. You are a great guest. Thanks so much for coming on. I really had a good time talking to you.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Bye, Stacey.
Bye, Dr. Rita.
That's Stacey Martin. Her book is The E Word, When Entitlement Becomes a Dirty Word and How to Overcome It. And we'll be back with Joseph Macchio after these words from our sponsors.